Okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. Last two classes here this week, today and Wednesday. Um, just a couple of comments about the final exam, which is scheduled for Tuesday from 8:30 to 11:30. It'll be chapter 18 and 24, our last two chapters that we've covered. Okay, 30 multiple choice questions. Um, because there's a university policy that I have to close the exam at 11:30 a.m. on Tuesday, and I want to leave it open for you for sort of the way we've been doing that 24-hour window. We'll open it early. We'll open it on Monday, December, and that'll be a week from today, December 10th, and we'll just open it, okay, guys, at 12 a.m., just to keep it easy. So it'll be open at 12 a.m., and it'll remain opened until Tuesday, December 11th at 11:30 a.m. because the university's telling us we have to close it at the time that it would have closed to avoid conflicts with other midterms or other finals. And, I don't think they're contemplating this situation where you can take it online anytime, and they don't want me to schedule an exam that conflicts with another exam. So, being what it is, we'll just go with the path of least resistance, which is to open it early, Monday, December 10th at 12 a.m. It'll close on Tuesday, December 11th at what time? 11:30 a.m. Okay, so don't get caught on that where you end up getting stuck and you can't get into the exam or something like that. Okay? Question? How do you know if you can take it online? The only way that you wouldn't be able to take it online is if you've missed more than one class since we came back from Thanksgiving. So if you've missed more than one class since, 11/26, is that what we said? Right? Then you're going to have to come to class to take it. If not, you'd be able to take it online. Question? Okay, we'll get to that. Question about the final? I'm sorry, repeat that? People who take it offline take it on Wednesday. Did you arrange on Monday? Did you arrange another time, Amanda? What was the alternative time?
I'm pulling it up. It's Monday in the evening.
7 p.m. to 10 p.m.
I think so.
So we've already arranged an alternative time. If you want to work with the team for another time, that's between the no. Okay, they're saying no.
We asked about alternative times at the beginning of the quarter. We have two time slots, and it's going to be online.
Okay.
So the alternative one will be online.
No. If you have to come to class to take it because you haven't maintained your attendance, then you can obviously come at the scheduled time. If you want another time, what the teaching team did at the beginning of towards the beginning of the quarter, they had asked you to basically reserve an alternative time, which was
Monday, December 10th from 7 to 10 p.m.
Monday.
And I'm going to be making an announcement. If you need to take the exam in person and you want it during that time slot, you need to email us. I'll put it in an announcement on Canvas today. We just need to know if there's people that are actually going to come during that time slot, and then I will email you all of the room information.
Monday, 12:10.
From 7 to 10 p.m. at night.
7 to 10 p.m. So there's that alternative. We can't schedule, 60 different exam times, guys. I mean, at some point you're going to have to fall into one of the slots we've provided. 30 multiple choice questions, just like the other two midterms. It's the 18 and 24. It is not, what do they call that? Comprehensive. It's not comprehensive. It's just the last two chapters. So it's sort of like a third midterm. Question? Counts for 100 points. Is there a question about the paper? The little project? Extra credit?
So would that be counted, like say you got 30 out of 30 points on that, would that be counted like a quiz that was 30 points, or would it be another additional 30 points on whatever you had?
It's additional 30 points on whatever you had, so we'll put a base of 0 in there, and you get it awarded 30 points, so it has the potential of throwing you up, this sounds funny, throwing you up to a higher grade, pushing you up to a higher grade, not throwing you up. Huh? Yeah, so like let's say you were an A. Well, that's going to obviously kick you into A plus status. If you were a B, B plus, and so on, etc. Question? Okay, guys, for today's class, the game plan is to get through the practice final that just to make sure we're all aware as to the location on Canvas. It is where we have put the practice midterms. Now it's a practice final right here, Stanford Winter 2018. Don't worry that it's not Winter 2018. Practice final, you can work that one right there, okay? And that's what we're going to work here together. I'm thinking we should have time to complete it or decide that we've seen enough, one way or the other, today, which will turn Wednesday into an optional session. By that meaning I will be here as I am right now. You can come to that class or not if you want. If you want to ask specific questions, etc., I'll be here, but I don't have specific planned remarks for that day, but we'll sort of hold it as a optional class / office hour type of thing where you can come and ask any questions you want. So that one will not count, obviously, against the attendance. Okay? Question? Okay, good. So with all that, let's go ahead and let's jump ourselves. Oh, one more thing. When you guys take over and you're the running Microsoft, talk to them about putting the power cord on the other side, since most presentation things are set up to the left instead of putting it to the right. So I've got to twist in circles here to get the thing where I want it. Okay. All right, good. One more thing. The lecture recordings, okay, are chapter 18 lecture I just put up there. Chapter 18 lecture is up. What was our last chapter? 24? Chapter 24 lecture, I don't know where it is. I thought I recorded it. I thought I saved it. I can't find it, but I do have an old one up there, okay, from another session. So, and it's pretty much, you may find that I tell the same stupid joke at the same stupid time that I did in your class, okay? So it'll be pretty much the same, okay? So you've got the lectures there, okay? I just want to point that out, that the lectures are there. And then I'm recording this one, and then I'll put it up next to the practice midterm that I just, practice final that I just showed you, the one that we're going to look at right now. Okay, all right. So let's take a look at these. And remember, we're talking about two chapters, the subjects being cost, volume, profit analysis, where we did a lot of break-even analysis. And we're also going to sit here and do some discussion of capital budgeting. And I don't know what this nonsense is all about, so let's see what we can do here. Okay, I don't know what's going on there, but hopefully it'll stop doing that. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at this first question. And we've got this company that sells movie tickets for $10 per movie patron. Variable costs are $7.50 per movie patron, and fixed costs are $50,000. The company's relevant range extends to 35,000 movie patrons per month. Now let's talk about a little bit relevant range, because I don't think we got much into that in the lecture. Relevant range is basically saying within the context of, say, one movie theater, the idea that we just have one movie theater. You start to get outside of the relevant range. You might say that you're going to add a second movie theater, okay? But within the relevant range, we're usually talking about one factory building, one movie theater. We're not talking about constructing a second facility, okay? So within the relevant range of just this one movie theater, we have 35,000 movie patrons per month that we can handle. What if FOB Motion Pictures projected operating income, what would it be, the operating income, if 25,000 moving patrons see movies during a month? So that 25,000, we're within the relevant range, right? Because we can fit 35,000, okay? And so we go ahead and we start to look at first the contribution margin. Contribution margin is going to be what? This $10 sales price on the tickets minus $7.50, the variable cost, leaves us contribution margin of $2.50 per ticket, right? Now, if we're going to end up with 25,000 patrons, then that means that our contribution margin is going to be $62,500. And remember, our contribution margin first goes towards what? Fixed costs, good. And then what? And then any operating profit, operating income, whatever, profit. Okay, it says profit. So when we look at that, if our fixed costs are what? 50,000, then we've got this 12,500 that is left over for our operating income, which was choice B in this case. Question? Okay, good. Let's take a look at this next one, number 2. And we've got this dinner theater sells tickets for dinner and a show for $40. The cost of providing the dinner is $26 per ticket, and fixed cost for operating the theater is $100,000 per month. The company can accommodate 12,000 patrons. What is the contribution margin per patron? And of course, this isn't asking a full analysis here. This is just asking one element of what we would need to determine a break even. And so we simply take the sales minus the variable cost. That's contribution margin, right? Now, this question then kind of leveraged, the next one leveraged off of that one. And that if we have a contribution margin of what? $14 per patron. same fact pattern. But now they tell us that we're going to have 12,000 patrons. What would be the monthly income? Well, if we have a contribution margin per patron of $14 and we anticipate 10,000 patrons, that's a contribution margin of 140,000, less than what the problem told us the fixed expenses were, which was 100,000. That would allow us to project an operating income of 10,000. 40,000. Okay. Okay, good. Let's take a look at this next one, in which, they're going to make us work a little harder to come up with our contribution margin by making us use our calculator to add up fixed expenses and add up variable expenses. Okay, nothing earth-shattering there. But we say, what is the contribution margin if we are going to produce and sell 50,000 units at $9 per unit? So we get our sales price, which is what? Our 50,000 units times the $9, that's $450. And then we take off our variable cost, and the big challenge here was, could we use a calculator to do what? Pick up these numbers that were called out as variable costs and add them up. Okay, so we go ahead and we add up our variable cost, or 140. The 450 sales minus the variable cost gives a contribution margin of 310. Okay. If you're waiting for deeper meaning, stop. Okay. Number 6, again, set of selected data, fixed cost, selling price, variable cost per unit. Did I skip one? Which one? 5? Okay, sorry. Using the same facts, what is the operating income? Well, now we have to sit there and add up those fixed costs that they gave us. Okay, and so the total for the fixed cost is what? 184, and just kind of finding our way back up into that table. You have to go back up there. Fixed costs are 184, the 120 plus the 42 plus the 22. That's where you got the 184. We know already our contribution margin here is 310, and so it wants to know what is our operating income. Well, we would take our contribution margin of 310 and then subtract off those fixed costs to give us an operating income of 126, right? Okay, stop me if there's a question, guys, because I'm going to assume that if you're not asking me anything, we've got it. Okay, all right, number 6, following selected data, assume 8,500 units are sold. What is the contribution margin? Okay, so we're going to take the 8,500 units. Well, they give me the contribution margin per unit, which is probably the smarter way to do it. The sales price minus the variable cost gives me the contribution margin per unit times what? Times the anticipated number of units. Contribution margin is 59.5. Using the same facts in question 6, if sales revenue per unit was 27 and 8,500 units were sold, what would be the contribution margin? So now it's just simply doing what? Computing the new contribution margin per unit here with the increase in sales price. And so now my contribution margin has increased, right? As my sale price has increased. Number 8, the muffin house produces and sells a variety of muffins. The selling price per dozen is $15. Variable cost per dozen is $9. Total fixed costs are $4,200. And what are the muffins that we have to sell to break even? Now, we first get the contribution margin per unit, right? Okay, and the way I like to do these, guys, just to make sure that I'm not in a mode where I'm memorizing a formula that I might forget, or a problem might throw me a curveball and I miss that because I'm all locked up in trying to get this formula out of my head. I always like to set these up as contribution margin per unit times what they're asking me here, which is what? The break even in units has to equal the fixed cost, right? And then I just go ahead and I plug in my numbers here. Contribution margin per unit is $6. They tell me that the fixed, I don't know what the break even in units are. That's what I'm trying to solve to answer this question. Equals, and they tell me the fixed costs are 4,200, right? Then I simply do what? I simply take the 4,200, just doing the algebra, divide both sides by $6, and that should then produce for me the break even in units. Break even units. Okay, and so when you do that math, you get what? 700 is the break even in units. Okay. Okay, good. Now, this one wants the break even in sales dollars. Now, what I would do is I would simply take the 4,200, which is the, not 4,200, but the 700 break even units, and I would multiply it by what? The sales price. So 700 times 15 should give me, or not 15, what do they want? Break even in sales dollars, right? Yeah. So the 700 times the 15 gives me 10,500. Just take the break even in units, multiply it by the sales price per unit. That's going to give you the correct answer there, right? Okay. Contribution margin per unit. Sales price per unit minus what? Variable cost per unit. Gives me $2.30 contribution margin per unit. Using the same facts, how many units need to be sold to earn a target operating income? Okay, the target operating income. Well, here's my target operating income, and here's my fixed cost. And so they want to know how many units I have to sell to first cover my fixed cost and then any desired target profit. So the way I set those up is I take the contribution margin per unit times, and I'm calling it TP units now. TP is what? Target profit units has to equal what? The fixed cost plus the target profit, because we have to sell enough units to cover our fixed costs and then have enough units left over to get my my target profit, my operating income here. Okay, so the contribution margin per unit we already know is what? 230. The target profit units are the unknown here. That's what the question's asking us. Our fixed costs are 94,070 plus the target profit of what? 50,830. Okay, good. And you add those two numbers together, what do you get? 144,900. Rama, is that what it was? 144,900, 230 contribution margin times the target profit units here. Simply do the algebra. 144,900 divided by 230 equals the target profit units we're looking for, which is going to give us now what? 63,000 units. Okay, so obviously I have to sell some more units if we want some money left over for our target profit, whatever it is. Okay, okay, good. Any questions? Okay, good. Number 12, information here about my fixed expenses, etc. And if Star Corporation spends an additional $20,000 on advertising, sales volume will increase 3,000. What is going to be the effect? Now, the first thing you would do is figure out the contribution margin per unit, okay, which is what? sales price of 50, variable expenses of 25, leaves me $25 per unit as my contribution margin, right? Then what? I'm going to sell an additional 3,000 units, so I'm going to generate an additional contribution margin of 75,000, right? And if I'm going to spend 20,000 more on advertising, presumably to be able to increase that sales level, then my operating income should increase 55,000, right? Question? Okay. Increase in contribution margin, right? Because of the increase in sales, but we have these increased in my fixed expenses, so there'll be 55,000 increase in operating income. Okay. Okay, good. Now this one is kind of interesting in that I don't know if I should use the word interesting, but it's different, okay? So maybe that makes it interesting. In that they give me the variable cost as 45% of sales revenue. Okay, we've been used to what? Them telling me basically what the variable costs are. Okay, now there's a couple of different ways to do this. What the textbook, test bank did is they simply took the 520 sales price times 45%, which is the variable cost, and then they computed the contribution margin by taking the 520 minus the 234, I should say, variable cost, leaving me a contribution margin of 286. So you could do that if you want to, be a little slicker about the way you do it, I guess. You could take 520 and multiply that times what? 55%. And that should also give you the 286. The only danger in doing it that way is you might mess up the percentage like I did when I was looking at this morning. I kept multiplying this times 65%, going, why isn't this working? And it was because I wasn't being careful and realizing that it's 55%. Okay, so you might want to go ahead and do it the long way just to avoid that. But once you get the 286 contribution margin per unit, and I'm not going to do the long setup for that, you simply divide that by what? The fixed into the fixed cost, and that's going to give me the break even. Okay, so you just had to know that the contribution margin is essentially the complement of the what? Of the variable cost. Okay. Okay, good. Let's come over and let's look at this. Dean Enterprises currently sells 1,200 per product for 1,200 per unit. Manages contemplating a 10% increase in sales price for the next year. Variable costs are currently 40% of sales revenue and are not expected to change. Fixed expenses are 147,000. What's the break even? Okay. Now, if you're going to increase the sales price 10%, you could take that 1,200. Is that how they do it? Yeah, the 1,200 and simply multiply it by 1.2, and that gives you the new sales price. Okay. Now, sales price is 1,200, and the variable cost. Oh, this is what I don't like about this problem. It's very confusing. I would not give you this problem like this on your exam because, to me, they take the 1,200 sales price before the increase of 10% and multiply that by 40% to figure out the variable cost, because the problem was saying the variable cost won't change. That's a little unrealistic in the way we've been talking about variable costs. We talk about variable costs that they change as what? As the level of sales changes. So I don't know what the hell they're doing with this question, why they decided to leave the variable cost based on the 1,200. My instinct would have been to do what? To take the 1,320, multiply that by 40% to get my variable cost, right? They just said variable cost didn't change, even though we've increased sales. Well, that flies in the face of the definition of our variable cost, doesn't it? So I don't like this problem anymore. I want to break up with this question, okay? But what happens, we sit here and we have this, if you do it the way they do it, 1320 less these variable costs that don't change even though the level of production change, which to me is a weird way of looking at it, gives me contribution margin of 840, and then we divide that by into our fixed expenses, which they told us were 147,000 a year. That for this stupid problem gives me the break even in units. I don't care for this problem anymore. Okay. I didn't realize it, I think, when I first chose that question as a practice question, that it had that nonsense in it. Okay, let's take a look at some questions then from our capital budgeting chapter, chapter 24. Okay, now a couple of these questions, and I need my present value tables. A couple of these questions are basically repeats of what we went over for the quiz. So I'm going to go ahead and look at some of the new ones that we have here, because I think we did these first couple of ones. Remember the Frick Road was buying that curb forming machine? I told you every time I walk by, every time I saw some construction near my house, every time I drive by it and I see they're building new curbs, I'm like, oh, I wonder if they have a curb forming machine, right? Okay, so I'm not going to repeat that one, but let's just take a look. This one is new, and this one is pretty good one to practice with here because it has the issue of the working capital. And remember, I told you that a common mistake that students make when they're looking at this is they remember to take the working capital out at the beginning, but they forget to do what? Bring it back at the end. It goes in at the beginning, back in at the end. Okay, so they have this cost of the equipment, which goes out now. The what? The 30,000 tie-up of working capital, which goes out now. And then they're telling me that the annual cash flows will increase 20,000, and the required rate of return is 20%, and the life of the project is 8 years. So that's 20,000 per year that's going to be coming in the future, isn't it? But I need to turn it to what? Present value, to now dollars, to be able to do this analysis. And so I take the 20,000 and I multiply it by the present value of the annuity factor. So I go over to my present value tables, and unfortunately this table decided that it had to stop at 12%. So I go to those other tables that give me more percentages. And this table's annoying because it skips 13% and 11%. Maybe this table is the table that leaves out prime numbers. I don't know what its point is about leaving out certain percentages, but I keep going, and there's my 20%, right? Okay. Now I'm looking at this, and I'm realizing as I speak, I'm not on the present value of the annuity table, and I know that immediately because all the numbers are less than 1, aren't they? The present value of the annuity table, the numbers all are bigger than 1, except that first annoying row, which it's one payment, it's not an annuity. But okay, you've heard my arguments about the tables. Okay, so we come over, and now we have our, 20% for our present value of an annuity. And it was how many periods? How many years? 8 years. Okay, so we go over to the 8-year row, scroll all the way across to, not all the way across, to 20%, and we've got what, this factor of 3.605? Oh, 3.837? Kind of hard for me to line it up here. 3.837. Okay, and so when we looked at the question there, was that the factor we picked up? 3.837. Okay, and we do the multiplication, and now we know what the present value is of those 20,000s. And then again, guys, don't forget, easy mistake to make, very easy mistake to make, is to forget to bring back in the working capital at the end, right? Okay, so that working capital is 30,000 that will come back, but it's going to be 8 years from now, isn't it? So we have to get the present value, and since that return of the working capital is a one-time thing, isn't it? So we can't use that present value of the annuity table. We go to present value of $1, right? Just the one payment. And so we come back over. We got to use the green tables here because it's 20%. The other one decided to stop at 12. And so present value of $1. I know I'm on the right table. Present value of $1. All the numbers are less than 1. 8 years. 20%. 0.233. Okay, and so we take a look and we plug that number in, and that gives me the present value of the working capital when it comes back 8 years from now. I add those cash inflows in, and we get this 3730. Okay, I don't know what they're doing here, guys. Every time I look at the solution, I start getting confused the way they set it up. Okay, I prefer to just have all my amounts stacked like that, future versus now. Okay, the amounts that are going out now are obviously now column. The future amounts I turn into now amounts by doing the present value calculation. Question? So are you going to do this project? Are you doing this project? Huh? Whoa, which one? Yeah, this one right here. Are you doing this project? Yeah, no, it's not this, it's not no, it's yeah. We're doing it because they have a positive present value, right? I mean, we're getting a 20% return on this, guys. Show me where you're going to get 20% return on something. So I'm all over this project, right? Okay. Okay, good. I don't know. I mean, there may be some companies that get a 20% return routinely, but I'm thinking that's a pretty good return. It's definitely better than a savings account. It's better than what the average stock market, even in a bull market, that's a good return, right? So we would probably go ahead and do that. Okay, good. We did the Galindo hauling one before, so I'm not going to repeat that one. Okay, but let's go ahead and let's take a look at this one. I don't think we did this Favaro. And for this one, they want the internal rate of return. Okay, now the internal rate of return is the return that will cause the net present value to be 0. Okay, so the way we set this up is we set it up as whatever amounts are going out now, which is the cost of the machine, has to equal the present value of the future amounts that are going to be coming in, right? And they tell us that we're getting 84,000 per year for the next 5 years. So we go ahead and we do the algebra to get the factor, the present value factor, that will cause the net present value to be 0, right? Where our future inflows will match our current outflow, right? And so that gives us a factor of 3.696. Now, since it's 3.696, I go over, and thank God I know the answer is 11%, so that I know that I can come over to what? To the table that has the 11% on the present value of the annuity. Okay? And so I come over, and guys, on your exam, there will be no numbers there will be no factors that are in between. Okay? If they were in between, you'd have to do something called interpolation, which would allow you to get the correct exact factor, interest rate, I should say, that's in between two factors by looking and seeing what is the factor at the high end minus the factor at the low end. That gives me the difference in factors. And then I go ahead and I take that and I divide that by the factor at the high end, at the low end. And that tells me what percentage of that high end I'm over. of that low end, I should say, that I'm over, and then I add that percentage to the lower end percentage to get the correct interest rate on it. Life's too short for all that, okay? I'm not going to make you do that, okay? Because you all have probably financial calculators that if you had to do that, you could calculate the interest rate that way without using these tables, okay? And so any problem that I give you will work out exactly on the table to the percentage. So sort of like Dora the Explorer, once you find it. What took you so long? Okay, it'll be right there, okay? So I have what? I have that factor now. I talked so long I forgot. 3.696, okay, is the factor. How many years, Rama? 5 years? Okay, good. So I go to the 5-year row here, and I run my finger along until I find the factor. What do we say it was? It's 3.696. What took you so long? There it is. You're going to find the factor, okay? You're not going to be in between factors, okay? So what happens? I'm at 11%, which was the answer to that question. And as long as that meets or exceeds the company's hurdle rate, their required return, they would accept this project, right? The other thing that they could do is rank the projects that they're going to do in order of internal rate of return and start with the higher ones until they basically run out of financing and funding, and then they'll ignore the lower percentage ones. Okay. All right. This one, I'm not going to give you a free response question, right? It's going to be all multiple choice. But I liked this question because it kind of gives us a nice review of the 3 methods we talked about, okay, which was what? Payback, net present value, and internal rate of return. And we have to calculate it for all 3 of those using this information. Okay, so here's our table, our present value of the annuity table, and we have to compute the payback. Now, payback is the easiest one and probably the least useful in that we simply take what? The amount that's going to be invested, which in this problem was $80,000, divided by the expected annual cash flows, and the payback is what? 4 years. Okay? Now, look, to me, if you're doing the payback method, you're basically saying, is there a project here that I want to just kick out of the house immediately? I'm not going to do it. And I gave you the example where the solar people kept coming to my house to get me to try to do some project, and they said, to put solar panels on my house, they said, oh yeah, and then in 20 years you'll get your money back on this thing. And I'm like, okay, 20 years when I'm 76? I mean, what am I going to do? Sit there and, I'm planning to be in the rest home by 76. I ain't going to be in this house when I'm 76 years old. I'm going to be somewhere, if I'm even above ground when it's 76, okay? So, no, I'm not doing this. This is ridiculous. And they're, well, what about the polar bears? Don't you care about them? Yes, I do. I have a stuffed polar bear that I hug, I sleep with every night, okay? Don't worry about it, okay? All right, so anyway, so we've got what? 4 years you're sitting here, right? Okay, on this particular one. And it's just a very upfront analysis, okay? Now, if we were to do net present value, then of course we have to get the what? Correct factor at, and the problem told us it was a 12% discount rate and for 6 years. Okay, and I'm not going to go to the table. I think you guys know how to use the table by now. We take that present value of the annuity factor times the 20,000. That gives me the present value versus the amount that's going out now, which is the 80,000, and that gives me 2,220 as my net present value. Okay. Now you could also do. Oh, they didn't give us internal rate of return here. Didn't ask for internal rate of return. Okay, but we can do it, I think. I don't see why not. Let's try it. Okay, so we're sitting here, even though they didn't give it to us, we can do it. Internal rate of return is going to be the factor Now, which might make this hard. I'm getting myself stuck here. I'm going to probably end up in between. But the factor times what? Times the 20,000 has to equal what? Has to equal 80,000? Oops. So we're going to get a factor of 4 here, right? So let's see if we can find 4. What is it, 6 years? It's probably not going to work. So we go for 6 years, and we run our finger along hoping to find 4, which 4.11. Okay, I can't do it. The other table skips 13% though, right? So I doubt it goes to 14. Let's try it. Stupid. See what I get frustrated with these tables. Okay. Present value factor. How many years again? 6? Yeah, we're in between. Okay. It probably is 13%. Okay. And they didn't give it to us there. All right. So that won't happen to you. On your exam, I'll make sure and have it so that it works out and you're not in between. That's probably why they didn't ask for the internal rate of return on that question. Okay. Question? Concerns? Yes, sir.
So I know you probably won't ask this in the exam, but how would we find the internal rate of return if we also had working capital? Because then we'll have two factors, right? Like if we had a single payment and an annuity.
That's a good question.
To find the internal rate of return?
That's a good question. You'd find it for the annuity, right? And then it would be whatever factor would give you for the dollar. So you'd have potentially 2 interest rates, right? In that question. I don't know. Obviously, you pick up the internal rate of return for the annuity one, which to me has more of an impact. I mean, I'm thinking what you could do is figure out to what extent each of those makes up the present value, and you could do a weighted average. Okay, so if the interest rate that you get for the annuity part, the annual cash flows, constituted say 80%, then and let's say the interest rate was 12%, you would take 12%. Let's just for fun, let's say that 100,000. Everything's going to go off here. So let's say that 100,000, you had 20,000 was the present value of, say, the working capital situation, right? And then say 100,000 was the present value of the cash flows, of the annual cash flows. So that constitutes what? Or make it 80,000, just to make the math easy. So that constitutes a total present value of 100,000. Okay, and so what you could do, I mean, a logical way to do it would be to take the 20,000 divided by the 100,000, and that would mean that 20% of whatever interest rate you find constitutes the present value of the working capital part. Okay, and then 80%, obviously, the 80,000 times divided by the 100,000 would constitute the percentage of the, that's attributable to the annuity portion, the annual cash flows. And the interest rates should be close, okay? They shouldn't be dramatically different, if we're basically looking at this project, using the same amount of time and the cash flows are there. I don't imagine that interest rate is going to be dramatically different. But let's say it was 10% for the working capital one, and then let's say it's 11% for the cash flow portion. So we would get what? We would get 20% of 10% is what? 2%? 20% of 10 and 11% of 80% of 11% is going to be what? 8.8% or something stupid like that? Yeah. Okay, 8.8%. And so then you could say that the rate of return on this is what? 10.8% by adding the two. And that makes sense in that it's sort of in between. That's called a weighted average. Okay? That might be a realistic way of coming up with it. A reasonable way, a logical way of coming up with it. I don't know about realistic, but a reasonable way of coming up with it. Okay? Question? You sure? Don't get to Wednesday and say, gee, I miss management 14240. Because this is it. Unless you want to come back on Wednesday, and that's optional. If you want to come back on Wednesday, you can. If you don't want to, that's fine. I won't take it personally. I'll be here. Okay, I'll be here to answer questions. So you may go through and look at some of your quiz questions, look at some of these questions again, have specific questions laid out about them, and we can sit here for that class period and do that. If not, again, the final is going to open up on Monday, December 10th, a week from today at 12 midnight, and we'll stay open until, when does it close? Tuesday, 11:30 a.m. Okay, so don't forget that. You can take it online, okay, or arrange to plan to be here in class to take it. Question? Currently, I just have the one, but I can look around and kick around and put something else up if you want to. Yeah, I'll look around. I'll find something, and we could go over that on Wednesday if you want to. If you want to come and do that on Wednesday, I could put that up. Okay. Okay, good enough. All right, guys, I will see you potentially on Wednesday. If not, have a good holiday season, and good luck with the rest of your exams and stuff. Thank you, sir. Wow. You guys are gonna give me a big ego here. Thanks, guys.